0321 a.m., Caribbean Sea. 110 kilometers north of the Venezuelan coastline, the Combat Information Center of a U.S. Navy destroyer is almost silent. No shouting, no countdown. Just the soft hum of consoles and the glow of radar screens. A single command is acknowledged. Seconds later, a precision weapon leaves the ship clean, controlled, invisible to the naked eye. For the planners, this strike is meant to be limited, measured, a message, not a war. Then, 3 minutes later, something unexpected appears on the display. A new track, intermittent radar illumination. Not an attack, but not nothing either. If this was only deterrence, why did every warning system suddenly come alive? The Caribbean has never been a quiet theater, but it is one where power is usually signaled rather than unleashed. For Washington, these waters represent access, stability, and credibility. For Caracas, the northern coastline is more than geography. It is sovereignty, made visible, a line that cannot appear weak without political consequences at home and abroad. Tensions between the United States and Venezuela did not ignite overnight. Years of sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and mutual accusations have created an environment where every naval movement is read twice, once as routine and once as a warning. U.S. naval deployments in the Caribbean are officially framed around security, cooperation, counter-narcotics operations, and freedom of navigation. Yet for Venezuelan planners, the distinction between law enforcement and military pressure is increasingly thin. That is why the United States favors standoff precision strikes in hypothetical escalation scenarios. A destroyer operating well outside coastal defense envelopes can deliver effects without exposing pilots, without crossing airspace, and without triggering the kind of visible confrontation that forces immediate retaliation. From a strategic perspective, it is escalation controlled by design, apply pressure, demonstrate capability, and leave the opponent room to step back. Venezuela's dilemma lies in how it defends against exactly this kind of action. Coastal radar sites, surface-to-air missile batteries, and fighter patrols exist to protect the shoreline, but they are also bound by political rules of engagement. Firing too early risks provoking a conflict the country cannot win. Firing too late risks appearing defenseless. And doing nothing at all carries its own danger. It invites the perception that deterrence has failed. In modern conflict, the most dangerous moment is often not the strike itself, but the seconds after it. When sensors light up, tracks appear, and operators must decide whether what they are seeing is an isolated event or the opening move of something larger. A radar sweep can be misread as an attack. A pause can be interpreted as preparation. Every signal is ambiguous, and ambiguity is where escalation thrives. This is the strategic space in which the strike near Venezuela unfolds, not a battlefield of explosions, but a battlefield of interpretation. Inside the destroyer's Combat Information Center, preparation began long before the first command was given. Hours earlier, the operational picture had been quietly assembled layer by layer. Satellite passes confirmed activity along the coastline. Electronic support measures mapped radar emitters flickering on and off near key ports. A maritime patrol aircraft flying a wide arc far beyond visual range fed the ship a steady stream of data, none of it dramatic, all of it essential. For the tactical action officer, the challenge was not finding the target. It was understanding the margins. How long would Venezuelan radar remain silent? Which systems were likely on standby rather than fully active? And most importantly, how much reaction time would the other side have once the strike was underway? These questions were answered not with certainty but with probabilities. Numbers that looked calm on paper but felt heavier in real time. Coffee sat untouched near one console. No one spoke unless necessary. In modern naval warfare, preparation is defined by restraint. Every action is filtered through rules of engagement written to prevent accidents from becoming wars. The strike window was narrow, measured in minutes, designed to end before any defensive response could fully form. On the Venezuelan coast, preparation took a very different shape. The night shift at a coastal radar station had learned to distrust routine. Weather clutter rolled in from the sea. Civilian traffic painted the scope with familiar patterns. Then there was the other kind of silence, the kind that came when foreign sensors watched without emitting anything in return. Operators compared notes quietly. One contact appeared, then faded. Another returned at a slightly different bearing. No alarms were triggered yet, but tension crept in all the same. The problem was not what they saw, it was what they could not see. Without clear guidance from higher command, every decision carried weight. Activate tracking radar and risk escalation, stay passive and risk being blindsided. Both sides were now committed, even though neither had fired a shot. One relied on precision and timing, the other relied on patience and perception. The distance between them was measured in kilometers, but the gap in information felt far larger. And somewhere between those two viewpoints, the first irreversible step was about to be taken. 03:24 a.m. The order is executed without ceremony. From the destroyer's forward section, a precision weapon launches cleanly into the night. There is no visible flash from the bridge, no sense of drama for anyone not watching the instruments. On the CIC display, a new symbol appears, its path calculated instantly. Speed, heading, time to target, all updating in quiet rhythm. The ship maintains course and speed deliberately unremarkable. For the US crew, the strike is already moving into its most vulnerable phase. The weapon is committed. The question now is not whether it will reach its aim, but what the other side will do before it does. 90 kilometers away along the Venezuelan coast, the first anomaly appears on a radar scope. It is not a clear track, more a suggestion than a shape. The operator adjusts gain, then range. For a moment, the contact vanishes into sea clutter. Then it returns slightly stronger, approaching from an angle that does not match civilian traffic. The room tightens. A supervisor steps closer, eyes narrowing at the screen. This is the moment every coastal defense crew dreads, the gray zone between certainty and assumption. The system can be switched from search to track in seconds. But once that happens, the signal goes both ways. Back in the CIC, electronic support measures detected immediately. A brief spike, narrow, focused. Not a missile lock, but not background noise either. Possible illumination, someone says quietly. The tactical action officer does not respond at once. He watches the timing bars slide forward. The strike asset is still outside the coastal defense engagement envelope, but the margin is shrinking. Every additional second of radar activity increases the chance of misinterpretation. A tracking mode could look like preparation for a shot. A shot would force a response. On the Venezuelan side, the debate is happening just as fast. Activate full tracking and risk provoking a confrontation. Or hold the system in intermittent mode, gathering enough data to show presence without crossing a line. The answer comes not as a clear order, but as a compromise. The radar pulses again, brief, controlled, just long enough to confirm bearing and speed. In the CIC, warning indicators flicker. Not red, not yet, but close enough to sharpen everyone's attention. Then the strike reaches its terminal phase. The target, described in planning documents as a maritime logistics node, registers impact. Sensors confirm the effect within seconds. The weapon performs exactly as intended. No secondary detonations. No spread beyond the designated area. From a purely operational standpoint, the mission is complete. But the situation does not relax. Instead, a new track appears on the display. Low altitude. Fast. Moving laterally along the coastline rather than toward the ship. It could be an aircraft. It could be a decoy. It could be nothing. For the first time since launch, the TO leans forward. The Venezuelan radar pulses again, slightly longer this time. Still no missile launch. Still no clear attack. Just enough to say, "We see you." This is the moment the planners worry about, the space after the strike, when intentions collide with perceptions. The United States has delivered its message. Venezuela has acknowledged it without words. Neither side has fired again yet. Both are now closer to escalation than they were 5 minutes earlier. The destroyer continues on course, but its posture has changed. Defensive systems are fully awake. Decision windows have shrunk from minutes to seconds. The strike may be over, the confrontation is not. The Venezuelan response is measured but far from passive. Along the coast, air defense crews shift posture without ceremony. No sirens, no missile rails rising into view. Instead, systems move into a higher state of readiness, the kind that exists between peace and open conflict. Radar operators extend pulse duration by fractions of a second, enough to refine tracks without committing to a full engagement. It is restraint by design, but also a warning. On the destroyer, the change is felt immediately. The ship's defensive suite tightens its loop. Sensors that had been monitoring quietly now cross-check aggressively. Every new emission is tagged, timed, and evaluated. A single misstep, a radar lock held too long, a sudden maneuver by an unidentified aircraft could collapse the remaining space for de-escalation. The tactical action officer is presented with 3 options, none of them comfortable. Withdraw and risk signaling weakness. Hold position and risk misinterpretation. Or adjust course slightly enough to show awareness but not enough to suggest retreat. He chooses the third. The helm acknowledges. The ship alters heading by a few degrees subtle enough that it would mean nothing to a civilian observer. To military sensors, it says something very specific: we are alert but not advancing. On the Venezuelan side, the message is received. The radar illumination eases, not off, just less frequent. No missile launch follows, no aircraft closes the distance. What remains is a standoff built entirely from signals and restraint. This is escalation in its most modern form. No shots exchanged, no casualties reported. Yet both sides have come close enough to feel how quickly control could be lost. The most dangerous phase is passing, but it is not over. Because now comes the question that lingers after every limited strike. Was this the end of the incident, or merely the rehearsal for the next one? What made this encounter so unstable was not firepower, but timing and perception. The strike itself relied on standoff precision warfare, a method designed to deliver effects without crossing the opponent's most sensitive defensive thresholds. By launching from well outside coastal engagement zones, the U.S. Navy reduced exposure while preserving escalation control. In theory, this approach limits risk. In practice, it compresses decision-making on the defending side into seconds. At the heart of the tension was radar behavior. Modern coastal surveillance radars operate in two broad modes: search and track. Search sweeps wide areas, building a general picture. Track narrows focus, allocating energy toward a specific object to refine speed, altitude, and trajectory. The transition between the two can be subtle, and that subtlety is dangerous. A brief tracking pulse can look identical at first glance to the opening step of a missile engagement. This is where electronic warfare and sensor fusion reshape behavior without firing a shot. Even intermittent illumination forces an adversary to assume worst-case intent. Defensive systems aboard the destroyer reacted not because a missile was inbound, but because the conditions for one were forming. In modern naval combat, reactions are often triggered by possibility, not confirmation. Cost asymmetry also plays a role. Precision weapons and advanced sensors are expensive, but their real value lies in how they influence opponent decisions. Forcing a defender to hesitate, reposition, or elevate readiness can achieve strategic effects without physical destruction. In this incident, Venezuela's restrained radar use altered U.S. posture just as effectively as a visible interceptor launch might have without crossing a political red line. Human factors compound the technical ones. Operators on both sides were processing imperfect data under strict rules of engagement. Fatigue, ambiguity, and the fear of being the one who escalates all shaped outcomes. No algorithm can fully resolve that pressure. Machines provide inputs, people still make the calls. This is the reality of contemporary conflict. Control is not lost when the first weapon is fired. It is tested in the moments when systems talk to each other through signals and when humans must decide what those signals truly mean. In the immediate aftermath, the region does not erupt, but it does not return to normal either. Naval and air units on both sides adjust posture quietly, patrol patterns change, readiness levels rise. What was once routine movement becomes deliberate, watched more closely by sensors and analysts thousands of kilometers away. For the United States, the strike achieves its narrow objective. Capability is demonstrated. Reach is confirmed. Yet the encounter also exposes a constraint. Even the most controlled use of force can generate reactions that escape precise planning. Escalation is no longer linear. It is cumulative, built from repeated moments of uncertainty. For Venezuela, the incident reinforces a different lesson. Direct retaliation is not required to shape an adversary's behavior. By operating in the gray zone through selective radar use, posture changes, and restrained signaling, defenders can impose caution without firing a shot. But this approach carries its own risks. Ambiguity cuts both ways. What deters one commander may alarm another. Regionally, the implications are broader. The Caribbean becomes a theater where miscalculation is increasingly plausible. As geopolitical tensions rise elsewhere, local incidents gain disproportionate weight. Allies watch closely. Rivals take notes. Each encounter adds to a growing library of precedent, subtly lowering the threshold for future confrontations. The most significant consequence is psychological. Operators on both sides leave the incident changed. They have seen how quickly a limited action can compress decision time and narrow options. The next encounter, whether days or months away, will be shaped by that memory. This is how modern conflict evolves, not through decisive battles, but through accumulation. Each near miss, each restrained response, each unresolved signal pushes the system closer to a point where restraint may finally fail. The incident near the Venezuelan coast will not be remembered for explosions or casualty figures. There are no dramatic images to replay, no wreckage to display. Yet it captures something far more important about the character of modern warfare. The most dangerous moment was not the strike itself, it was what followed the minutes when sensors lit up intentions were guessed, and human judgment carried more weight than any weapon system. Precision did not eliminate risk, it merely relocated it, from the point of impact to the space between interpretation and reaction. For the US Navy, the operation demonstrated reach and control, but also revealed how thin the margin truly is. Even perfectly executed actions can provoke responses that planners never intended. For Venezuela, the encounter showed that restraint, when combined with credible signaling, can influence outcomes without triggering open conflict. But it also highlighted how easily restraint can be misread as preparation for escalation. This is the paradox of contemporary military power. The tools are more accurate than ever, yet the environment they operate in is less predictable. Radar pulses replace warning shots, posture replaces firepower, decisions made in seconds can echo for months. What this episode ultimately underscores is a simple truth. Modern conflict is not defined by who fires first, but by who controls perception after the first move. When that control slips, escalation no longer needs intent, only momentum. As technology accelerates and decision windows shrink, the responsibility placed on human judgment grows heavier, not lighter. Understanding these moments matters because the next one may not end with restraint. Bye for now.